I'm Brian Foster, and today I am talking about Spiritism. Today we're going through the book Through the Mist, Chapter 8, Hope Blossoms into Promise. Before I begin, let's have a prayer. Dear Jesus, please help us receive inspiration and intuition from our spirit mentors, our guardian angels, and good spirits and family that is in heaven from all around us. Please help us open our hearts and filter everything through our conscience so we can do the right thing and we can feel less stress and fulfill and make ourselves in harmony with calming vibrations. Amen. Okay, so today is chapter 8. And before I begin through the mist on chapter 8, let me recommend, if you'd like to learn more about Spiritism, did the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Is download my book from nwspiritism.com. It's my blog site with a lot of information about Spiritism. You can find a lot, as well as on my Facebook site. You can find a lot of information. You can find a lot of people telling you about Spiritism and classes in Spiritism. But if you like an overview of Spiritism, you can download my free PDF, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. It's also in Kindle, paperback, and in Audible format. So you can get it in all of those formats, but you can certainly download it for free in PDF version right on my site, nwspiritism.com. It's also in French. Now, let us start the book. This is chapter 8. Hope blossoms into promise. Now, just to set the stage for what happened before, our spirit who had died just very recently, right? He was very welcomed in the spirit world because he was a very good character. He performed lots of charitable work, helped the poor in the slums in London, and he'd been taken and led through to this kind of sanitarium type place. And he witnessed this wonderful ceremony and concert and healing ceremony where they sang songs and they had these great presentations, and then they brought in all these people in horrible conditions that were probably from the lower zone, and they were outwardly what they were, thought what they were inwardly, and misshapen or paralyzed, and that this wonderful Krishna came and see that he had laid hands on all of them and made all of them awake. So now that just ended. So now it's chapter 8, Hope Blossoms into Promise. I was surprised to see that Krishna was as ready to leave as his two companions had been, for his utterly at variance with all my previous experiences. Such a gigantic ceremony or service would be held and leave no details to be arranged afterwards. The order with which that audience separated was as perfect as which had characterized each feature of the chorale, and contrasted more favorably in every respect with the scenes we are so accustomed to on earth. There is no unseemly endeavors, by voice or gesture, to attract the attention of a friend, no discourteous interruptions for the sake of a chance word, no rushing to and fro in the crowd to find someone who is missing, or rudely crushing forward in a futile attempt to catch a train. Friends met without any multitudinous inquiries as to the health of the absent, or restless, anxious look in the eye, as if fearing the reply would be unwelcome. No farewells and hand grips which lingered in the impression that it was the last. But the strangest experience of all was that I held such long converse with the three directors of that service, without a single interruption or attempt to interfere with our communion. With that burst of welcome home in which the chorale concluded, everything concerning it came to an end. No one individual had positively anything else to do but go. Those who had received such wonderful benefits were joined and led away by friends, and the entire concourse separated, perfectly conscious that they could meet again individually or in mass whenever they desired to do so, without the necessity of inserting any if in the arrangement. We were the last to leave the hull. And while I was listening to the revelations which Mahine was making to me, I was conscious, by that dual power of observation we all possess, of admiring the undisturbed aspect of the place, which bore no indication of the presence of that great multitude who had departed. So here he's really contrasting the kind of the chaotic departure and actually the chaotic arrival during a play, a movie, whatever, people talking, people rustling. Here, people came in, they were quiet, they listened, and they went back out again, all in orderly fashion. That is life in heaven. The same lack of commotion was equally noticeable when we reached the open air, where Mayim and Siamedes took their departure. Everything around me was in the same quiet, restful condition as when I first wondered as to the nature of the building. Before I fell asleep, I heard the magnetic chiming of those silvery bells. Now, said Krishna, I shall be pleased to take you to see a sister in whose welfare I am deeply interested, and whose story you will find to be full of profit and instruction. Then this is not your home? I inquired as he led me away in a contrary direction to that by which we had approached the hall. Not by any means, he replied. My house is filled with children, among whom I find my chief pleasure and employment. This is but a temporary resting place for such as those whom have we been ministering, a kind of halfway house for restoration and recuperation. Are we going to your home now? No, you have much to see and learn before you would be able to understand its nature and arrangement. But you shall presently, when you will be able to renew the acquaintance of that little fellow you carried through the mist when you came. Is he with you? How is he? I asked eagerly, as his existence was called to my memory. Now that was the boy that he saw in the middle of a busy London street at the end of the 19th century. He ran out to try and save him. Of course, they were both of them, the spirit, whose name was Fred, and the boy. They were both killed, and they had no memory of being killed or any pain. They woke up on a grassy knoll in heaven. Gently interposed my companion, which prevented me putting a half dozen other queries crowding to the tip of my tongue. Of course, he said that because as a spirit who's been there for a while, he could read his mind. He could read, he could read all the things wanted to ask him. He says, "No, slow down, you'll learn." One question at a time is the much better method, especially here, where a very simple one frequently opens up a volume of information which we always wish to convey as clearly and definitely as possible. He is with me, as I tell you, and is also of necessity well. And again, this is the philosophy of spirits in heaven. They dwell on the present, and they dwell on improving themselves and learning what's placed before them or learning what they wanted to learn. And they take their time and they take a step intellectually through what they're trying to improve on, what they're trying to explore, whatever their task or mission is. They concentrate on that. They're not like here on earth where we think always about, oh, this person did something to me in the past, or oh, in the future I want to buy this truck, or I can't stand that friend. They don't allow themselves to be misdirected by these influences and by these feelings that come over them. They have, since you are now in the spirit world, and you are not in this dense body anymore. You can filter out the thousands waves of different emotions that come through you. You can still pick them up when you want to, and you want to read people's minds, but you can stop that if you want, and you can allow much better concentration and calmness. And of course, then and again, but that's the whole kind of philosophy of heaven: is you're there and you concentrate on the presence. You concentrate on what's going to improve you and add to your knowledge and wisdom and love. Okay, I'll carry on. So this is what the spirit Fred just said. I wonder what his friends thought about his death. It is strange that I should never have given a thought to that before, but gently now, or I shall not be able to answer you. Try to remember that there is no necessity to string your questions together. There is ample time to ask each one separately and receive full answers to them all. His friends were not troubled very much after the first imitation of it. He was one of a large family, not too generously provided for, with every energy called into requisition to honestly obtain a bare existence, and little time to develop the higher qualities of the soul. It was therefore more of a relief than otherwise after the first shock, because there was one less to provide for. How are you acquainted with all this? I asked. There is another study opening to you. Now you see how wise it is to only ask one question at a time. It is not at all difficult for us to ascertain all the information we require in a case, since, as will be explained to you at a fitting opportunity, there is a delicate thread which forms a connection between child and his body, and by following this, we can make all the necessary inquiries. So, the way they can ascertain is a spirit with experience and has the right level can look at the boy, can follow all about the boy in the universal database. Let's say that's what I call it. Is it because everything about us and the boy is all recorded, is completely recorded. Every minute thought of every action and thought of people all around him. This the spirit could easily go and look at all the boy, and then he could also look at, okay, what's his family doing now? And he could go and he could peer and see what his family's doing right now. This is what the spirit will learn about as he matures and learns in heaven, and you will too. How, Kushna, how? I cried, and my heart beat with a feverish excitement engendered by his words, a daring, impulsive thought that it was possible to throw that door of my hope wide open and for my prayers on the slopes to be literally answered. Appalled at the next moment with my own audacity, the power of movement forsook me, and I waited to hear his answer with a feeling akin to that a felon feels with the dread moment a verdict has come and his life is quivering in the balance. Krishna certainly did not appear to understand the situation sympathetically. On the contrary, a smile of calm amusement played over his face as he quietly replied, "Now, how do you think we could do it? But by sending for the purpose." "What? Sending someone from here?" I cried. "Of course. Do you think anyone on earth would do it and report correctly?" Okay, so instead of going to the database, he sent a spirit to say, "See how all that family's doing and come back and report to me." You could have done it either way. Of course. Oh, yeah. But is there such a thing really possible? And the realization of my dream became momentarily more tangible. His dream is to communicate with people on earth to tell them what heaven was really like and to expose the misconceptions that he had to go through when he was part of the Christian religion. "Why not?" he tantalizingly asked in reply, instead of giving me a direct assurance. "I don't know, Kushna," I cried, "but my heart is tearing itself to pieces between hope and fear. Tell me definitely if it is so or not." "It is certainly so, my friend," he replied, "however hard it may be for you to realize the fact. Meahin has been speaking to you of an unchangeable God. That implies an unchangeable communion. Intercourse between the two worlds was enjoyed by the men of old, and it must needs be the same now as then." And again, this is one of the questions that we talked about during our Q&A on Monday is people will take the Bible as literally true, the New and the Old Testament. And what we have been told is you cannot say for God and Jesus, you can only tell us what's in this book and you can't say anything more. No, you cannot fence in their words like that. How dare we? God and Jesus is always communicating to us through different people in different ways by signs and signals constantly. Some things are lessons learned, maybe a little bit different that you're learning in the Bible. And Spiritism tells us that when things were written in the Old and New Testament, the communications to people at those time and places was at the level that their culture and technology could understand. Therefore, things are always changing. This is why Spiritism brings us more information from spirits all the time. And these spirits are always validated through Spiritism mediums. So we know that they're still organized as they originally were by the Spirit of Truth in the 1850s, which was told to us By Jesus Christ in the New Testament, I will send you the Spirit of truth to give you more information and to console you, a consoler. I'll carry on. I do not doubt your word, but what you tell me is so far beyond what I dreamed was possible, though I have many times indulged the hope since changing my state, that I doubt my senses when they convey such intelligence to me. Help me to overcome my difficulty and say if you know how this from practical experience. Yes, it was during one of my missions from Mahine to Earth that I first saw the sister we were about to visit. Tell me about her, and perhaps your relation will assist me to grasp this glorious news, so far transcending my power of comprehension. A friend and fellow worker who was still in the flesh had made a request of Mahine, and I was sent with a reply. So here's how this works. A person, a spirit, who is now incarnate on Earth, probably during his dream state, made a request of me and said, I think we need help here on the physical plane. And then the person went back to his body, and then Krishna was sent to Earth to help the reply, right? To tell this person this is what's going to happen. During our interview, the nature and manner of which will be explained to you presently, I noticed a young woman standing behind one of the company, whom I could see was in great need of help and sympathy. I spoke to her, but she could not hear me, and several other means by which I tried to attract her attention failed. I could not leave her without trying to do something to mitigate her terrible agony, but I was unable to help her without knowing the cause which produced her sufferings. To accomplish this, I described her and her condition as I saw it to the company, by a means which you will learn presently. She was recognized and well known to one from whom I learned all that was necessary. And I promised to use my best endeavors to assist her, with what result you'll be able to form some opinion when you hear her story and see her present condition. Why, Krishna, would you have me believe that death places no obstacle in the way of continued communication between the two worlds? And his answer, no, not by any means, for such an idea would be very erroneous. It's tough, as I said before. When mediums and prophets communicate with the other world, it's hard for them to understand. It's hard for them to understand the exactness of the language, and there's concepts they can't grasp. But at the same time, I do want you to understand, I'm carrying on, that the difficulties are not insuperable. As you have already discovered, the boundary line is marked by a curtain of mist, and the obstacles we experience are such as are due entirely to that condition of things, continually varying according to the determining influences which maintain upon the earth side and regulate the state of the cloud. You cannot understand this for the present, but when an opportunity arises for you to study the phenomenon, you'll be able to appreciate what I say. In the meantime, it is sufficient for you to know that all obstacles may be overcome and that communion between us and the earth is not entirely suspended. You have been permitted to take part in that intercourse, that I might do so if such a thing was possible, was my first conscious desire after I realized my interest upon this life. Tell me, shall I ever be able to gratify that wish? Because he wants that wish because he wants to come back and tell people what he's found. He's so excited. He's given an answer. Certainly, you may if you desire it, and I cannot conceive of a more glorious work than to be engaged in helping to remove the doubts and fears under which our brethren upon the earth are laboring. I thank the Father for his favor in allowing me to take a share in the great work of reopening this communion, which has been committed to the more powerful teachers. Oh, wait, I went ahead too far. Of his love. The work is slow in progress and difficult to prosecute, but the little which has already been accomplished is working with a wondrous leaven, and truth being powerful to the pulling down of the strongholds of error. And at this time, when this was done at the end of the 19th century, we already had Allan Kardec in 1850s codify Spiritism in the Spirits book. So therefore, things were starting to happen. It must so continue until the gloom of ignorance is driven away and the peaceful and harmonious kingdom of God established upon the earth, with a basis firm as we behold it here. And then the Spirit says, well, how soon may I begin? Such a vocation would change the dream of my life into glorious reality. I was convinced of the presence of error, but though I thought I could not find the truth for which my heart was craving, for which multitudes of others are seeking, wearily in heart sick, now I have found that there can be no greater joy than carrying the knowledge back again for their comfort and instruction. So, this spirit who just recently died just wants to go tell everybody what he found. And in this is why he was allowed to talk to very important people in heaven, why he was led around, why he, hobnobs with already advanced and powerful spirits, because he was already infused with the spirit of service, of wanting to help others. Just as soon as he went across the veil, he died, he passed away, and became a spirit. His dream was, oh my God, this is a wonderful place. I need to tell everybody about this. That is the attitude that is wanted in heaven. They want you to be intellectually curious, and they want you to have a desire to help others. And this is what we should work on in this life. Okay, I'll carry on. Whenever you are ready, the opportunity will not be wanting for you to begin. But till then, you must be patient. A very limited experience will convince you that great skill is required to uproot error successfully and plant the truth in its place. Competency for such a work can only be acquired by careful training, diligent study, and an extensive acquaintance with the laws and requirements of the spiritual life, as you'll see them unfolded here. Now, what he just said is the same is true for mediums on earth. A medium has to study, understand divine laws, understand spiritism, understand the different levels of spirits, because the level of medium attracts the level of the spirit. So you have these mediums who charge for their service, or they'll have a tendency to talk to lower spirits, and then you'll have the spiritualist channel these spirits, and they'll give them some good information, some off information, and it won't be correct. And that's why it's important to really, if you're a medium, you have to advance yourself. You have to step up, study about the spirit world, understand the divine laws, and really get your heart so it's full of love and understanding. It's not easy. Being a medium is a hard job. I'm not a medium, but from what I read and what I talk to people, it is not an easy job at all. Okay. It is far better to let the old error remain than to pluck it up only to plant a new one in its stead. But I am sorry to say this is what being done at the present time, in very many cases by incompetent persons who have rushed into this communion before they are qualified to do anything beyond the simple fact of demonstrating the immortality of the soul. So there you have it. So there's people who think they know who think they know what's going on, and who believe they understand how the spirit world works, and they find one that they can communicate to, and they start writing this down, and everyone thinks, oh, this is the truth. It's like the book of Urantia. Some things were correct, but overall, no. It was by a spirit who thought he knew everything. Is it possible, I asked in amazement, that friends can return to earth and teach error, meaning rectify what they believe, right? It is not only possible, he replied, but I regret to say it is an actual fact. Though it is only just to add that, except in the case of deliberately untruthful messengers, wicked earthbound men and women, the error in every case is due to ignorance rather than design. Let me explain how it arises. Every soul who enters this life is seized with the desire you have mentioned, to get back to earth and make known how vastly different all is to what they have been taught to believe. At the same time, comparatively few have the desire to learn the nature and conditions of our life as you are studying them. The great majority, being satisfied with things as they find them for a considerable period, make no attempt to increase their knowledge. With their minds to a great extent unoccupied, they presently learn the possibility of reaching the earth, and full of desire to make their continued existence known, they break the silence of death to find themselves called upon to answer 1,000 inquiries upon subjects respecting which they have failed to gather information, and the result is the error to which I have referred. Think for one instance of the position in which you would be placed, supposing you at this present moment had opened up this communion and a question was asked: do children grow in the spirit world? Or again, what are the methods employed to teach children in the next life? Or third, how do you proceed when you wish to elevate a spirit in a lower condition than yourself? To the first, you would reply in the light of your experience, you having seen children in the corrals, and say no, which would be an error. To the second inquiry, you could answer nothing, and to the third, you'd have to be content with a simple expression of opinion. This your friends would at once accept as a definite statement, being led from their earth education to believe that kind of omniscience is acquired in the process of death. And again, yes, Spiritism tells us, when you die, you are who you are. You're just as ignorant, you're just as smart, you're just as nice, you're just as mean. I may further illustrate and emphasize this by asking you to suppose that your desire to return to earth had been granted at the moment of its conception, or before you'd been instructed in the things now made known to you, and that during your interview you were asked respecting these matters. Would your replies have conveyed any adequate idea of the truth as you would teach it at this present moment? Of course not, I was compelled to answer. And see, so this is why when people talk to spirits and know that when a medium says, well, I talked to this spirit, and say, okay, what you should ask, and most people get mad at this, is how do you know the level of the spirit? How do you know what they say is true? Have you talked to the spirit multiple times? Have you tested them? Have you seen what they talk about? Do they understand the spiritist tenets? Do they understand the different levels of heaven? Do you understand what you learn as a spirit, how colleges work, how you acquire more information and more aptitudes as you rise and you become less dense and more energy? Does that spirit know that? Does that spirit talk about love and justice? Or do they talk about helping you get revenge on somebody? Because if so, that's not a high spirit. These are the things that mediums who are serious about their work need to understand. And the best thing is to really read Allan Kardec's The Book of Mediumship, or The Book of Mediums. And of course, you can just type in Allan Kardec space PDF, and you can find all those books. Or go to my blog site, nwspiritism.com. Click on his picture on the upper right-hand side, and it'll take you to a bookstore with Allan Kardec's and Chico Xavier's books, and some other Yvonne Pierre's books, which are all wonderful. I recommend. Okay, I'll carry on. Neither is it possible for others in a like condition to do justice to the inquiries made of them. Therefore, I say it is best rather to allow the old error to remain than to pluck it up and plant a new one in its stead. The necessary corollary of this ignorance is contradiction, which gives strong presumptive evidence of the unreliability of this intercourse to those who most strenuously oppose it. And the whole thing is believed and taught to be a device of wicked and malicious spirits to deceive the unwary. So again, and I understand when because people talk to a spirit, they think a spirit should be infallible. Everyone should just be an awesome genius and know everything. As soon as you die, like wham, you talk to Jesus, you see God. No, none of that. Some may talk to Jesus, not many. No one will see God. In fact, spirits in the higher levels of heaven around the earth say they don't understand God. You have to be a very high spirit at the level of Jesus and above to understand God. Even they don't, much less we. So no, it doesn't happen. And so take this in and understand this is a complex process. This is a process that you should fully understand before you make judgments on prophets and writings and messages from spirits. Okay, I'll carry on. I fully appreciate the wisdom of your advice to wait. I promise you that whenever the opportunity occurs to me to break my silence, I will not offer any opinion beyond the scope of my actual knowledge. But it is not possible for you to know these things, to anticipate such ignorant assertions and so prevent their mischief? Sometimes, he answered, but not very frequently. Nevertheless, in these instances, we are dropping the seeds of truth, which are springing up and are already bringing forth good fruit. But in the great majority of cases, we are prevented from doing as we would by the operation of a very powerful spiritual law. What is that? I asked. You've already seen that we are attracted to each other by the law of spiritual harmony and fitness. Kindred souls have mutual feelings, and the full reciprocation of these make our happiness more complete. Yes, I understand that. Again, this is very important. It's the law. It's called the law of affinity by Spiritists, and that's like gathers with like. So you have people in different levels of heaven gather together because they're kind of on that same level of love and fraternity and honesty. And the same law of affinity places people in the lower zones of the dark abyss, in these the bottom parts of purgatory, where people who don't like each other, are materialistic, who are mean towards each other. Well, they get to go with people like them. This is all part of the spirit world saying, okay, you want to be with people like them? There you are. See how you like it. That's how the spirit world. The spirit world uses evil to fight evil and good to increase good. Okay, let me carry on. That same law of attraction and repulsion exists and regulates the intercourse between the two worlds. Let me tell you my own experience whenever I tried to open this communication. Generally, I have found the persons who I desired to speak intolerantly dogmatic in favor of some accepted creed, which prevented them honestly and freely inquiring into any new spiritual truths. Such an attitude of mine was by no means congenial to me, and my presence being equally repugnant to them. A suspicion was engendered by which I was powerless to overcome. Therefore, I had no choice but to retire and leave such inquirers to the mercy of those who, in their ignorance, would affirm the infallible truth of the accepted creed. And we see that all the time. We see that by very, very well-meaning people who, unless it relates to something in the Bible, some verse, chapter in the Bible, it cannot be true, and it's probably sent by a demon. And yes, you'll have spirits give misinformation, and I totally agree that one has to be very careful in communicating with spirits. That's why you need to be prepared and you need to be trained. But the people, they have such a rigid, they're brought up to have such a rigid idea of what can be told and what can be so and what's not so, that they can't understand a little bit to understand more. And I understand that. It's not easy. It's difficult. I'll carry on. Then the spirit asks, were you not able to expose the ignorance of such teachers and so do away with their authority? And he said, not very readily, for the simple reason that their low spiritual condition more closely assimilated with the ignorance favored by the creed. My teachings, being more spiritual, received no sympathy, were pronounced to be false and deceitful. I was commanded to retire without further attempting to disturb their faith, and leave the work to those who have been tried and thought to be true, because they confirmed. Oh, sometimes I carry on too far. They confirmed those ideas which had been previously taught and professed. And did you leave them? Undoubtedly. I had no right to force my presence upon any person to whom it was objectionable. And again, this is a truism of the spirit world. And I get these questions all the time. Well, like, okay, how come the spirit world doesn't tell this prophet that they're wrong? Because they don't do that. They let you find out. They don't force their ideas on you. If you're open, they will tell you. If you ask, they will tell you. If you have a closed mind, they'll let it be closed until such point in time when you are ready to open your mind. They're not going to say to a medium, so like some of the Christian mediums that I listen to, and they're all wonderful people, but they don't believe in reincarnation. And I would like to say, why don't you ask if there is reincarnation? But they never ask that because they don't believe in it. So therefore, it's never been told to them, yeah, there is. Because I've heard one prophet say things like, when when you're getting ready to be born, you have certain talents that will come out. It will come out, and you will exercise those talents as you become an adult or a child, right? You'll have these talents. And I thought, well, that's the first little seed of planning your life, and you're planning your life before you're born. Why can't you do this multiple times? It's the first seed of some type of predestination as far as the trials and tribulations you go through. But they were never. The Spirit will just let them learn that far. They didn't say no, it's more than that. They don't do that. And it's the same thing when people say, well, God talked to me. No, the Spirit will talk to you, and if you think it's God, they won't say no, it's Fred. They won't say that. They'll let you be. They'll let you be. Think what you want to think, and they'll have a Socratic dialogue with you many times, and they'll answer your questions. But you have to think out of the box for them to be able to expand your horizon. And if you're only thinking in the box and you don't accept anything outside of the box, guess what? You're not going to learn anything outside of the box. They're not going to break the wall down for you. That's not how they work. You have to want to know. They're not going to force you. You have free will. And did you leave them? Oh, yeah. Okay. I said, okay. They were seeking and they found just what they sought for, not the truth, but a confirmation of their creed. They are satisfied, and though we are cognizant of the fact that their intercourse serves to ground their error more deeply, whereas it is designed to promulgate the truth. We have to be content to wait in the hope of some favorable opportunity to correct the mistake. When it occurs, use our best endeavors to remedy the evil. What prospect do you have of realizing that hope? I asked, with some trepidation, for the bough of promise appeared to be fading from my sky. He wanted it right away, of course, as we all do, as I listened to his enumeration of the difficulties which stood in the way. And of course, now, Fred is still new to heaven. He still has this urgency. He doesn't yet have fully appreciated the fact that he's immortal and everyone he's going to talk to on earth is immortal. You've got time. I am sure of it, he replied with a calm confidence, was at once restored by drooping faith. Men are now making a discovery that truth is infinite, while creeds are finite. Truth is infinite, while creeds are finite. That just as it is impossible to reduce the illuminable to a geographical atlas, so it is useless to endeavor to embrace the whole of truth in the most elastic confession of faith. Crumbs of spiritual bread are falling on the earth, and, being full of satisfaction to hungry souls, men are beginning to appreciate the natural food which is prepared in heaven. They everywhere are seeking, finding, assimilating, and growing into a visible spiritual stature. They are able to understand as they never did before, lifting their eyes to the hills, and he's really talking about Spiritism here. Praying, entreating for a more plentiful supply of this living bread, and the manna is falling upon such day by, in spite of the church's ban or priest's anathema. The morning of our hope is breaking. The clouds are fleeing away, and when we cry to the watchmen on the towers of Zion, the responses are full of cheering consolation, bidding us to prepare for the victory which is at hand. Truth must conquer, for that is the child which God surnamed omnipotent. But nature's maternal admonitions counsel it to perfect its victory in patience. The units of its followers are steadily multiplying into tens. These will speedily be gathered into hundreds, the hundreds into thousands, and so the armies will grow and be officered from the hosts of heaven. Then the two worlds will be united in one final effort, which shall usher in that establishment, in the practical form, of the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, in which truth shall reign forever and ever. So that is chapter 8. Hope blossoms into promise, which he's now seeing an opening that he can go back to the earth and talk to people. And of course, you see, he was successful. He gave us this book, which I'm still going through every Tuesday. And it is wonderful. There's not the word spiritism in here, but everything that they've been talking about correlates with the the Spiritist doctrine and tenets and what we've learned from spirits. And this is one, I think, one of the most important things we learned from this. This was done in the late of the 19th century, almost the 20th century, around 1900. And that so more information is coming to us all the time. It's not just the Old, the New Testament. It's not just the inspirations from Buddha and the Dalai Lama. That's been before that, because the Dalai Lama is always telling us new things too. These people who are and these high yogis in India and Buddhist priests that will have inspiration to tell us, we're always being told more wisdom and more things by the spirit world. And therefore, we shouldn't limit ourselves to one set of documented words at one point in time. And Spiritism tells us that there's going to be more. We're entering a phase where we're the end of a plan of atonement. We're beginning the plan of regeneration, where we're going to get more and more of these revelations. And in fact, more important people from other planets who are higher level than we are coming to Earth to help us. Famous people are being reincarnated. I don't know how soon. I do know that Socrates and Buddha are coming back. I don't know if they're here now. I do know that Emmanuel, who was the spirit mentor of Chico Xavier, has been reincarnated sometime in the year 2000. He's now 22 or 21, somewhere that age. And that's why a lot of these people were started being born around the year 2000. And this is why we are being told by Spiritist mediums that the really the beginning phase of being a plan of regeneration, where we will start cutting off injustice and hate and envy and revenge, won't disappear. It's all nothing. It's not going to be a snap. It's all going to be a trend line, right? We'll start around the year 2050, because when you're born into the year 2000, and it takes people a lot of time to become noticed and sought after and listened to. You don't come out of the womb like, oh, we're going to listen to this baby. No, you're going to have to go through your 20s and your 30s and some of your 40s in order to reach a stature where, like, okay, this person knows what he or she is talking about. And I think Joanna D'Angelis is coming back, another marvelous lady who's dictated many books to the wonderful medium Devaldo Franco. I recommend her books too. So all these things are happening to us. And so prepare yourself for more messages to many people and to yourselves. Meditate and pray. You too will see the signs of and signals of what could be happening. I think it's very important to understand what is occurring and what can occur. And therefore, I recommend a couple of my books. One, to kind of what I wrote, The 7 Tenets of Spiritism, and I have it right behind me, right there. 7 Tenets of Spiritism was my own personal story of how I discovered Spiritism and how I see and I receive the signs and signals from the spirit realm. And it wasn't until I discovered Spiritism and I look back and I go, oh, that wasn't a coincidence. There was a method to that madness. I mean, give you an example. I always wanted to go into the Air Force. In high school, I wanted to apply for the Air Force Academy. Well, in my senior year of high school, my eyes went bad, right? And at that time, there was no eye surgery. And I wanted to be a pilot. And I said, forget it. I'll go in computer science instead. That door was not open to me. They were not going to allow me to do that. That was not part of my plan. And in fact, I saw there was, in case for somehow I did get into that. Years later, when I was older and I went to Disney World with my family, and I'd been on simulators and the roller coasters. I didn't like them that much, but I was okay. But I went on this one simulator that really just moved me around randomly. I mean, like some of the simulators where you could command, I never felt uncomfortable. But I was on the simulator that just moved me, really jerked me all around the place. I left that ride. I was almost fainting. I couldn't breathe. I was sweating. And my family was looking at me like, what's going on with dad? And then years later, I thought about that. I thought, you know what? There's no way I could ever have been a pilot. First time I was put in one of those movement simulators, they would have flunked me right away. And so that, uh, that's one of my signs, right? Just they're going to close some doors, other doors will be open, right? They're going to lead you. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I would also recommend my book, The Spirit Realm. Spiritism may reveal the reality of our existence, so you can understand the spirit universe, the subset, which is the physical universe. There's multiple dimensions in each. What you are as a spirit, how you grow as a spirit, how you learn as a spirit, how you should act here on Earth to grow on Earth in order to really be received and start to hitting the ground running when you get into heaven, because you will be in heaven if you lead a decent life and you try it as hard as possible and you haven't harmed, and if you have, you repented and you've tried to repair those mistakes and you said, I'm not going to do that again, because we've all done stupid things, we've all done harmful things to people. But it's they want to see that commitment for improving yourself, which is extremely important. So I want to say, everyone, thank